Every picture you hold in your mind is a blueprint the universe is already building from. Right now, as you sit here, there's a scene playing behind your eyes. Something you want, something you fear, something you keep rehearsing without realizing it. That inner movie is doing more than passing time. By the end of this, you'll understand why Neville Goddard staked his entire teaching on a single radical claim. What you imagine with feeling hardens into fact every single time, with the reliability of gravity. Neville didn't arrive at this idea through philosophy. He arrived at it through experience. In the 1930s, he was a young dancer in New York, broke, desperate to visit his family in Barbados, and unable to afford the trip. His mentor, Abdullah, told him to sleep that night in Barbados, in his imagination, to feel the sheets of his childhood bed, to hear the sounds outside the window, to smell the salt air. Neville thought the old man had lost his mind, but he did it. Night after night, he fell asleep in a bedroom 3,000 miles away, using nothing but the vividness of his inner senses. Within weeks, the means appeared. He sailed to Barbados in a way he couldn't have orchestrated with a decade of planning. That single experience became the seed of everything he taught for the next 30 years. And the teaching was deceptively simple. Your imagination is God, the actual creative power operating the universe, and every state you occupy internally must eventually express itself externally. The time lag between the inner picture and the outer fact fools you into thinking they're unrelated. They're the same event, separated only by the thickness of time. So why imagination specifically? Why did Neville elevate it above affirmation, above willpower, above prayer, as most people understand it? Because imagination is the only faculty that lets you occupy a state before it exists in the physical world. You can't think your way into a new reality. Thinking stays abstract, analytical, one step removed. Imagination drops you inside the experience. You feel the handshake, you hear the congratulations, you smell the new apartment. When the inner scene is vivid enough, your deeper mind can't distinguish it from memory. And that confusion is the mechanism. Neville called this living in the end. The phrase gets repeated so often it's lost its edge. So let's restore it. Living in the end means your dominant inner state, the one you return to when the day quiets down and you're alone with yourself, already contains the fulfillment of what you desire. You've stopped reaching for it. You've stopped hoping. The psychological posture is possession, the way you feel about something you already have. Think about your name. You don't affirm it, you don't visualize having it, you just know it. That's settled. Knowing is the feeling Neville was pointing at. But here's where most people stall. They create a beautiful scene, feel it intensely for 10 minutes, then open their eyes and immediately start scanning the room for evidence. The old world looks the same. Doubt floods in, the inner state collapses, and they conclude the technique failed. Neville addressed this directly. He said the three-dimensional world is a shadow, always lagging behind the fourth-dimensional cause. Reacting to the shadow is like arguing with a movie screen. The projector is behind you. Your attention belongs on the film you're feeding into it. This is where the real discipline lives. The inner work that separates someone who dabbles in imagination from someone who reshapes their life with it. Neville described it as a mental diet, a term he borrowed from Emmett Fox, but took further. Every thought you entertain is food. Every inner conversation is a meal. You spend most of your day in a running internal monologue, and that monologue is building your world with the same certainty that bricks build a wall. One anxious conversation rehearsed in the shower, one argument replayed on the drive to work, one worst-case scenario entertained before sleep. Each one is a creative act. Each one is imagination operating. Just aimed at what you don't want, the mental diet asks you to catch those moments and revise them. A harsh inner dialogue with your boss becomes a scene where things resolve well. A financial worry becomes a brief, vivid sense of abundance. The weight of a full wallet, the ease of paying without checking your balance. The revision doesn't deny the current situation. It denies the current situation's authority to dictate the future. And that distinction is everything Neville taught compressed into a single practice. Now, a reasonable question surfaces here. If imagination really creates reality, why do so many people imagine terrible outcomes and never experience them? Neville had a specific answer. Fleeting thoughts lack the power of sustained states. A passing fear that crosses your mind during a stressful afternoon carries almost no creative weight. The states that harden into fact are the ones you dwell in, the ones you return to habitually, the ones that feel natural, the ones you've accepted as simply how things are. That quiet, resigned, "this is just my life," carries more creative force than 100 panic thoughts. Because resignation is a sustained state. It has feeling in it. It has acceptance. And acceptance, in Neville's framework, is the very thing that tips imagination into manifestation. This is why he emphasized feeling so heavily. The scene alone is a sketch. Feeling is the color. When he said, "feel the wish fulfilled," he meant something muscular, almost physical. The warmth in your chest when you get good news. The relaxation in your shoulders when a problem resolves. The specific quality of relief when something you've wanted finally arrives. That feeling, married to the scene, is what he called the creative act completed. Everything after that point is just the world catching up. He drew this understanding from scripture, reading the Bible as pure psychological allegory. In his interpretation, every miracle attributed to God was actually a description of imagination operating through an individual. When the text says God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, Neville read it as consciousness declaring a state and that state appearing. The God of the Bible, in his teaching, is your own wonderful human imagination, wearing the mask of an external deity because the authors wrote in metaphor. Once you strip the metaphor away, the instruction is breathtakingly direct. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and creation is done. Critics within spiritual circles sometimes push back here. They argue that this makes God too small, that reducing the divine to human imagination strips away mystery, reverence, the sense of something greater. Neville would say they have it exactly backwards. The claim is that human imagination is the divine. Your ability to close your eyes and construct a world that doesn't yet exist in matter, to hear voices, see colors, feel textures that have no physical source, that ability is the most godlike thing about you. Calling it just imagination reveals how deeply you've been trained to dismiss your own creative nature. A child knows better. A child lives in imagination so completely that the line between inner and outer barely exists. Neville's teaching is, in a sense, a return to that unbroken state. So, what does this look like as a daily practice? It looks like choosing your inner state with the same care you'd choose what to eat. It looks like sitting quietly before sleep, the state Neville called the state akin to sleep, where the conscious mind relaxes its grip, and constructing a brief, vivid scene that implies your desire is already fulfilled. A friend shaking your hand and saying congratulations, a bank statement with a specific number, a doctor using the word clear. The scene should be short, first person and packed with sensory detail. You loop it until it feels familiar. Then you let it go. You drift into sleep, carrying that feeling the way you'd carry a warm coal against your chest. And then comes the hardest part of all, the waiting. The bridge of incidents, as Neville called it, the unfolding series of events that connect your inner act to its outer expression. You can't predict what the bridge will look like. It might involve a conversation you didn't plan, a delay that redirects you, a seeming setback that positions you perfectly. Your job during this phase is singular. Maintain the state. When doubt knocks, return to the scene. When the old story tries to reassert itself in your inner monologue, revise it. When someone asks how things are going, and the honest answer is nothing's changed yet, find the version of you who already has the thing, and answer from there. The bridge is built by your sustained assumption. Every time you waver and return, the bridge gets a new plank. Neville taught this for 3 decades to packed lecture halls in Los Angeles and New York. He gave away his teaching freely. He told people to test it, to prove it in their own lives, because belief without personal experience is just borrowed conviction. He shared story after story of students who imagined specific outcomes, jobs, healings, reunions, financial shifts, and watched them materialize through means they couldn't have invented. The consistency of the results was his evidence. He didn't ask anyone to take his word for it. He asked them to take their own imagination seriously for 1 week and observe what changed. The reason this teaching endures almost 60 years after his death is that it answers a question most spiritual paths leave open. What specifically do I do? Neville gave a mechanism: imagination plus feeling, sustained in a drowsy state, allowed to harden without interference. The simplicity of it makes people suspicious. Surely transformation requires more complexity, more steps, more suffering. But a seed doesn't need to understand botany to become a tree. It just needs soil, water, and time. Your imaginal act is the seed, your feeling is the water, and time, that patient, invisible worker, handles the rest. Tonight, when the lights go off and your body settles, you'll have a choice. You can fall asleep replaying whatever the day threw at you. The worries, the unfinished arguments, the dull hum of anxiety that's become so familiar it feels like silence. Or you can build a scene. One scene, 30 seconds of vivid felt experience that contains everything you want, as though it's already yours. The version of you who already lives in that scene is waiting on the other side of your closed eyelids. The only distance between you and that life is the depth of your willingness to feel it real.